All right, well then we've got another one from Quora. Can I form an LLC in a different state than I live?
This is a pretty common question we get a lot because a lot of people read online about forming an LLC in Delaware or Wyoming or New Mexico or Nevada or something like that. And they think, well, I live in, let's say, South Carolina. Can I form a Wyoming LLC? So the answer is, it depends. It is possible to form it. Legally you can form it in any state you want. Now, depending on the nature of the business you're doing in the entity itself, depends on whether it needs to also be registered in your home state. So, for example, let's say you are a real estate investor and you live in, let's say South Carolina, and you're buying rental properties in South Carolina and Georgia. Absolutely, you can, and I would recommend this, I would register those LLCs to own those rental properties in Wyoming. And there is no need for you to register that LLC in your home state if the purpose of that LLC is just to own the asset. Now, if you were also going to be doing all of the property management itself through the same entity, then the LLC would need to be registered in that home state of South Carolina because now you have what's called nexus in the state. A nexus means a physical connection to the jurisdiction where you operate. So what that means is, like, if you have an office or you have employees in that state and you're paying your employees and you're withholding payroll tax on them and that sort of thing, you need to be registered in the state where your employees are located. So in this case, if you were investing in real estate, if it were me, I would buy all the properties through one or more Wyoming LLCs to separate the ownership from the operational side of the business. And then if you were also going to handle property management, let's say you were buying a lot of properties and you wanted to do your own property management instead of outsourcing it, I would register another LLC in the state of South Carolina solely for the purpose of property management, and that's where your employees can work and you have an office for that. And so in that case, this is a good asset protection strategy as well because you're separating the operational side of your business from the ownership of the assets itself. And so, for example, let's say, your plumber that works for your operational business or your property management business damages something at one of your properties or damages your customer's car. Well, then they could only go after the property management business because if they were suing it for damages, they would be suing the property management business and not suing the LLC that owns the property. So you're kind of separating or segregating the liability on the operational side away from the ownership of the asset side. So that's what I would do in that case. Now, another example is if you have like a normal operating business. For example, let's say you live in Ohio and you're starting a plumbing company. Well, in that case, you are going to need to register that LLC in the state of Ohio because for the same reason I mentioned before, you're going to have nexus in the state of Ohio. You're going to have an office, you're going to have employees, you're going to have equipment and trucks, and you're going to be physically operating an operating business. The key there is an operating business in the state of Ohio. And so it really depends on your situation, what you're planning to do. Now, another example here is if you have a completely virtual business with no employees. Okay, so let's say you have a software company, you have a SaaS product, and it's completely virtual. You don't have an office. Everyone in your company works remotely. And let's say all of your workers are contractors outside of the U.S. Let's say they're all contractors in the Philippines, for example. And you live in Indiana. You could very easily register that company in Wyoming with no issues whatsoever because the business doesn't have an operational activity in the state of Indiana. You live there, you might have a management role there, but you don't have an office and all of your employees that you're paying are not U.S. persons and they're outside of the U.S. anyway, and you're paying them as contractors. So you wouldn't have nexus in Indiana. So in that case, you could register that LLC in Wyoming to operate. So each situation is different, but basically the easy way to look at it is if you have an operational activity in the state where you live with employees and an office, then you need to register it in your home state. If you don't have an operational activity with an office and employees in your home state, then you're much more free to open it where you want. Okay? I hope that makes sense.
Makes total sense.